In 2021, DOMLEC informed the IRC of the need to initiate a tariff review. The Commission contracted the service of a regulatory consultant from the Paris Infrastructure Agency, PIA, and we got funding from the Agence Française de Développement. And we engaged the service of the consultant to conduct a review and to analyze critical parameters of the tariff regime document. These documents, which we received from DOMLEC, includes the application for depreciation study, the application for determination of the weighted average cost of capital, the application of the rate base, the application for the investment plan, and the application for the cost of service for DOMLEC. In 2021, the IRC conducted an audit of DOMLEC's fixed asset as at December 2020 and an audit of its inventory as at June 2021. Now, the fixed assets and inventory are critical parameters for determining what the average tariff will be, what the revenue requirement for DOMLEC will be. So therefore, we conducted the audit to determine whether or not the asset existed. So the audit of the fixed assets, overall, the objective was to determine the physical existence of this asset and to determine whether these assets will be considered used and useful for the determination of a tariff, and whether this asset will be considered as a regulatory asset. Now, a regulatory asset is the asset that the regulator considered that will be used and useful during a tariff-making period. We also did an audit of the inventory of DOMLEC's inventory. Same principle to consider whether or not these inventories will be used and useful in the determination of rates exercise. And the purpose of a depreciation study. Why do we conduct a depreciation study? Now we know depreciation is a very large expense, as pointed out by Mr. Watson. It is an expense, it's a large expense, and it is a means by which it has to do with more or less the decrease in the value of an asset, like of a building, of a motor vehicle. So he elaborated on this well. So in November 2022, DOMLEC submitted to the Commission the application for approval of a depreciation rate. So I am just going to present the work that IRC did in finalizing that process. Now, DOMLEC submitted via soft copy to the Commission for review the undermentioned accounting data. So it was a total of 2,650 accounting records. So that's in terms of the assets on the building and construction, plants, all the generators, the network assets. Then on the registry, we have a range of assets, so that will take into consideration software, also office furniture and office equipment, tables, chairs, whatever we have in the office to allow the office to operate smoothly in providing the service. And in this document, we received the gross value of the item, so that's the cost of the item, the accumulated depreciation to date, and the commissioning date of each asset. Now, DOMLEC initial depreciation calculation as contained in the depreciation rate. So we are seeing, based on the initial submission, what the depreciation that was submitted. So we have building and construction, plants and machinery, network assets, and we had a total assets that existed at the time when they calculated of 19.8 million. And we have the rate per category of assets. Now in their proposed submission to the IRC, they calculated the depreciation at 17.3 million, and we are seeing the rates. Now, what we are seeing there, the higher the depreciation rate is the shorter the age of the asset, and the lower depreciation rate is the longer the life of the asset. So we saw a decrease from the proposed to what was existing there of 2.4 million. Following this, the IRC and DOMLEC had collaborative discussion. So the IRC, with the support of its regulatory consultant, and DOMLEC, of course, with the support of its consultant, engaged in technical discussion, aiming to arrive at a fair approach for depreciation. This first submission, as I indicated, was in November 2022. The second submission was in December 2022. We had an updated submission in April 2023 and a final submission in May of 2023. The analysis done by the IRC. So PIA, which is the agency, the consultant group for the Regulatory Commission, and IRC reviewed DOMLEC initial submission to calculate the depreciation rate study submitted to the Commission, as I said, along with the soft copy. The PIA and DOMLEC noted that the proposed depreciation rate resulted in a decrease of 2.4 million, as shown in the previous slide. We saw that the decrease in the depreciation expense was as a result of the prolonged lifespan of some of the assets under the category of building and construction and transmission and distribution assets. DOMLEC calculated the depreciation expense based on the average age of all assets in use, including fully depreciated assets, and following that, the IRC also noticed that DOMLEC utilized the whole life method to compute the depreciation. The whole life method, this is the formula. And we noticed that DOMLEC did not factor the adjustment for salvage value of its assets in the calculation of depreciation. DOMLEC proposed one specific life duration for each category of assets under the category of building and construction, and we found that it led to an overestimate of the depreciation for that subcategory. PIA and IRC agree that the depreciation method that could lead to a more accurate result would be to exclude fully depreciated assets and have them weighted using the net value of the assets, as it is more accurate. Following further review conducted by the IRC, looking at the items, which was 2,650, the regulatory consultant proposed that the depreciation method be adjusted, and that's the formula. So as we continue in our deliberation, we convened special meeting with DOMLEC to get insight or feedback from the work performed by the regulatory consultant and DOMLEC's consultant. Both consulting groups participated in the meeting virtually and presented their findings to the IRC. Both consulting groups debated on the depreciation method that would provide the most accurate result to complete the depreciation rate for DOMLEC depreciable assets for regulatory and financial purposes. Following the deliberation, it was agreed that the remaining useful life be used to compute the depreciation rates. Following this, DOMLEC consultant submitted a revised accounting data that calculated the depreciation rate and the average age of the assets. The IRC again conducted a comprehensive review of the data. We recalculated the depreciation amount of the items, which is 2,650 assets, using the remaining useful life. We used different options. One option that includes fully depreciated assets among the list of items and weighted the items by the gross value. We also look at an option that excludes fully depreciated assets among the list of assets and weighted the assets by the gross value. The third option that we used was to exclude fully depreciated assets among the list and weight it by the net value. And then the fourth was to exclude fully depreciated assets among the list and weight the assets by annual value. Overall, using the gross value to weight the depreciated assets significantly overstated the contribution of the older assets, more so when the fully depreciated assets are included. In analyzing the average age of this subcategory of assets, which was building and construction, using option 1 and 2, resulted in a higher average age for the purpose of evaluating depreciation. The higher the average age of the asset was, the higher the depreciation. Based on our review, we found that option 4 was most accurate. In May 2023, the regulatory consultant submitted the revised report that calculated the depreciation method produced by DOMLEC's consultant. The Commission convened a special meeting again to deliberate on the accurate method. Following the evaluation by DOMLEC's consultant, by the regulatory consultant, DOMLEC consultant further adjusted the depreciation rate using the remaining useful life. In the final analysis, DOMLEC and IRC agreed to the revised proposed depreciation using the remaining useful life method as recommended by the IRC's consultant and as agreed by DOMLEC consultant. And in the final slide, we can see what was the final outcome. So we saw that following the work that we did on the previous submission, that's the one for December 2022, we had 18.2 million in terms of depreciation. And following the final revision of the depreciation study, reviewed by IRC's consultant and of course IRC's team and DOMLEC's team and DOMLEC's consultant, DOMLEC accepted the submission and the depreciation rate we agree upon or we are proposing is $12.7 million. So in the final analysis, both DOMLEC and the IRC agree to use the remaining useful life, and we agreed to use the depreciation of $12.7 million. Now, this $12.7 million will be used to determine, so that calculation will be used to determine the depreciation rate of each asset under each category. Hence, our meeting here to determine, to bring forward to you, the public, to get your insight as to whether or not we should accept that proposed depreciation. So now we will go to the question segment, where we will propose the questions and we will hear your feedback. Thank you.